London Bridge, Chinese trunks, and Secret Service. Plus this day in history with the Shinrikyo sarin gas attack. And our song of the day by Connor Oberst on your Morning Monarchy for the first day of spring, March 20th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to wherever you are in the world. Good morning. We thank you for joining us for another hour-long blast of media brought to you by you. We've been online since 9/11/05, and it is all thanks to you, our latest patrons over the weekend. Huge thanks to Nathan G. He went to patreon.com/MediaMonarchy and signed up for the monthly pledge that keeps us moving and grooving, my friends, going and growing. We are brought to you by you. MediaMonarchy.com/support has all the links, all the places you can go to support our independent, non-commercial, alternative work. And you know what else someone did? This is a nice, good first day of spring, good news note. Someone actually bought a Media Monarchy subscription for someone else. They were already a patron. They just added $1 a month and gifted it to someone else. That's awesome. And you can pay that kind of thing forward as well. Hey, we also got a little bit of Bitcoin donation as well. And we talked to our buddy Mike over in Philly. He's on the tweets at AFixJS. We talked about tulipomania and the Bitcoin bubble. I was going to continue that conversation today, but that seems a little more appropriate for a Cyber Space War Day. That's going to be tomorrow on Tuesday. Each day of the week, we tend to focus in on a different area of the news. Monday's world news, Tuesday's tech, Wednesday's food, Thursday is occult, and Friday is the entertainment industrial complex. So we'll continue our Bitcoin and tulip mania conversation on tomorrow's show. But today there is, holy moly, a whole lot of news, and it just keeps on happening. You may have not heard it just yet. Let me be the bearer of good news for you. David Rockefeller dead at 101. There's no love lost in the chat going on right now, and we appreciate it when you join us here live. Just a couple minutes after 9 a.m. Pacific time, coming to you as always from the MediaMonarchy.com studios. It is Monday, March 20th, 2017, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Yesterday was a little bit rough around the house. Again, we've been talking about a little bit of the family health emergencies we have. My wife is still out of town and will probably be for another couple of weeks. We do have a GoFundMe going, and I'm not trying to push that here through all of this, but if you are interested, if you are able to support us, you can email me and ask me for that link, james@MediaMonarchy.com, and we hugely, hugely appreciate that, and all the other people who are already huge givers to Media Monarchy, but are that much more generous. Like I said, there is a ton of news to get into, so let's glance at the breaking lamestream news real quick. Hey, that missing Tom Brady Super Bowl jersey's been found. Whew, I was worried about that. UK to start Brexit on March 29th. That's what Theresa May just said this morning, invoking Article 50. We'll have a little bit about Brexit as it relates to Scotland coming up in just a few moments as well. The Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch begins his Senate confirmation hearings. Meanwhile, there's a couple other hearings going on as well, and that would be James Comey, FBI stooge. Now, when we saw the news over the weekend of Hillary saying she was coming out of the woods, she meant it to say, oh, I'm going to go shopping for thousands of dollars and get my hair done for, $2,000 and take my good buddy along with me. That could have also been code. That could have also been some kind of telegraph to James Comey to come out and say, yeah, there's no evidence for anything that Trump says about wiretapping. Of course, no one's ever spying on it. That's just ridiculous. It's only been proven time and time and time and time and time again. I saw it in the chats. Springtime for Hitler. Spring, first day of spring, is a great day for David Rockefeller, billionaire philanthropist, to die at the age of 101. Now, I'm not sure if that kind of fits in with the family's occult actions or not, or if it's, new life, getting rid of the old death-obsessed. David Rockefeller, the billionaire businessman and philanthropist who was the last in his generation, was one of the country's most famously philanthropic families, died Monday at 101. Died in his sleep at his home in suburban Pocantico Hills in New York, according to his spokesperson. He was the youngest of 6, born to John D. Rockefeller Jr., and the grandson of Standard Oil co-founder John D. Rockefeller. With the passing of his siblings, he became the guardian of his family's fortune and head of a sprawling network of family interests, both business and philanthropic, that ranged from environmental conservation to the arts. To mark his 100th birthday in 2015, Rockefeller gave 1,000 acres of land to a national park in Maine. Aspects of the Rockefeller brothers' upbringing became famous, including the 25-cent allowance, portions of which had to be set aside for charity and savings, and a bunch of blah-blah-blah bullshit coming from the Associated Press. I'm sure it'll take a few moments longer for actual real news to come out about Rockefeller. And then, of course, it will come out from the independent media. It's generally one of the only few places that truth is rolling out from. Now, that doesn't mean we have the ultimate monopoly on truth. But rest assured, things like this are pretty much sitting done on a computer. That's why, when you're watching the news one night and, some famous person's died, like, wow, how did they edit together that amazing death reel? Like, they already did that. They hire cubes of people to work on that shit. And all they got to do is wait to write the last thing, March 20th, 2017. Slap that on it and do it. Our friend Ray Vahu asked the question, has anyone seen the corpse to be sure? That's, of course, Twitter kills people all the time. And that's actually, of course, where I saw the news about 30 minutes ago. I saw it from Courthouse News, and then I started to see it from other major organizations right around New York, and I was pretty sure. Plus, as far as hoaxes go, I can't see David Rockefeller's death getting that much traction and action in the lamestream media. People are more interested about, Betty White and shit like that. So ding dong, that dick is dead. Meanwhile, there's also very large announcements of what they're going to do when the Queen is dead. London Bridge is down. The secret plan for the days after the Queen's death. A massive report from The Guardian that, again, is a lot of a telegraphing of what's coming. They're announcing it to you in advance, exactly what's going to happen. And, of course, this is another one of those great examples where it's like, it's a secret plan. Secret plan, everybody. In the plans that exist for the death of the Queen, and there are many versions held by Buckingham Palace, the government, and the Beeb, most envisage that she will die after a short illness. Her family and doctors will be there. When the Queen Mother passed away on the afternoon of Easter, again, always interestingly dying on days of significance. Days of astrological significance. Days of pagan significance. They sell lots of religion and hoobity-boo to us, but it seems like they generally worship the sun. When the Queen Mother passed away on the Easter Saturday in 2002 at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, she had time to telephone friends to say goodbye and to even give away some of her horses. In these last hours, the Queen's senior doctor, a gastroenterologist named Professor Hugh Thomas, will be in charge. He'll look after his patient, control access to her room, and consider what information should be made public. The bond between sovereign and subjects is a strange and mostly unknowable thing. A nation's life becomes a person's, and then the string must break. Very flowery prose from The Guardian. There will be bulletins from the palace. Not many, but enough. The Queen is suffering from great physical prostration accompanied by symptoms which cause much anxiety, announced Sir James Reed, Queen Victoria's physician 2 days before her death in 1901. The King's life is moving peacefully towards its close, was the final notice issued by George V's Dr. Lord Dawson at 9:30 on January 20th, 1936. Not long afterwards, Dawson injected the King with 750 grams of morphine and cocaine, enough to kill him twice over in order to ease the monarch's suffering and to have him expire in time for the printing presses of the Times, which rolled at midnight. Again, all very well orchestrated. Both esoterically and just from a media industrial complex standpoint. Her eyes will be closed and Charles will be king. His siblings will kiss his hands. The first official to deal with the news will be Sir Christopher Geidt, the Queen's private secretary, a former diplomat who was given a second knighthood in 2014, in part for planning her succession. Geidt will contact the Prime Minister. The last time a British monarch died, 65 years ago, the demise of George VI, was conveyed in a code word, Hyde Park Corner, to Buckingham Palace to prevent switchboard operators from finding out. For Elizabeth II, oh, you mean because everybody's listening to everything all the time? Yeah, that's right. See again. Read between the lines. The answers are all right there. For Elizabeth II, the plan for what happens next is known as London Bridge. The Prime Minister will be woken, because she ain't woke if she's already not awake, and civil servants will say, quote, London Bridge is down on secure lines. From the Foreign Office's Global Response Center, At an undisclosed location in the capital, the news will go out to the 15 governments outside the UK where the Queen is also head of state. That's right, Canada, Australia, all you poor subjects of inbred royalty. And the 36 other nations of the Commonwealth for whom she has served as a symbolic figurehead, a familiar face in dreams and the untidy drawings of 1 billion schoolchildren. Since the dawn of the atomic age, for a time, she will be gone without our knowing it. The information will travel like the compressional wave ahead of an earthquake, detectable only by special equipment. Governors general, ambassadors, and prime ministers will learn first. Cupboards will be open in search of black armbands 3¼ inches wide to be worn on the left arm. The rest of us will find out more quickly than before. I'm not sure if Marina Abramovich will be catering. That's another one of the questions asked in the chat. And this article from, again, The Guardian goes on and on and on, and they even call it the long read. She's venerated around the world. She's outlasted 12 U.S. puppet presidents. She stands for stability and order. But her kingdom is in turmoil, and her subjects are in denial that her reign will ever end. That's why the palace has a plan. That's why they have a plan. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for the first day of spring. It is Monday morning, March 20th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, giving you a fear-free look at what is really going on in the news. And we're glad you're here. So as we just saw in the breaking lamestream news at the top of the show, UK to start Brexit on March 29th by invoking Article 50. However, meanwhile, Scotland's announcement Monday, today, that it will begin preparations for a new independence bid raised the specter of one of Brexit's most feared consequences, and that's what we're all really excited about, and that would be the breakup of the United Kingdom.
The Scottish Highlands, coastal towns like Ullapool, were built around one of Scotland's traditional resources, fishing. Last June, many fishermen who felt penalised by EU quotas voted to leave the European Union. James Stephen was one of them, but he fears that Brexit may not, in fact, turn out to be a good deal for the fishing industry.
In return for Britain to get a good Brexit deal, I could see the fishing rights maybe even being worse than they are at the moment.
A large part of Scotland's fish production is sold in Europe by exporters like Peter McCann. Along with 62% of fellow Scots, Peter voted to remain in the EU. On account of Brexit, he wants an independent Scotland.
For the fishing industry in Scotland is best protected by Scotland, and with the context of Brexit, it definitely needs to be looked after by Scottish people, not those in London. Fishing isn't a priority for London or Westminster. Yeah, I welcome the fact there'll be a new referendum on independence.
Inverness, capital of the Highlands. Here, questions of identity are taken seriously. Scotland's nationalist First Minister wants a new referendum on independence to be held within 2 years. In pubs like Peter McCann's local, Scotland's political future is again the main topic of conversation.
First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, which is interesting given all the fish talk they just had there, said she'll seek the semi-autonomous Scottish Parliament's authority next week to ask the UK government in London for the powers to hold a referendum before Britain leaves the EU. The decision heightened the uncertainty surrounding Britain as London braces for 2 years of tough negotiations to leave the European Union, itself an unprecedented step. The Scottish move also triggered secessionist calls from nationalists in Northern Ireland and Wales. Now, when we get towards the end of this episode, I will mention that today is actually the anniversary of numerous terror events, several of them being related to the Troubles in Ireland. Past is prologue, my friends. History doesn't just repeat, it rhymes, and we can read the playbooks, and we can see what moves they're going to make on the shooty hoops board. Article 50, the formal notification of Britain's intention to leave the EU, will be triggered on March 29th, a Downing Street spokesperson confirmed just this morning. The notification will take the form of a letter addressed to Donald Tusk, President of the European Council. The EU's permanent representative to the EU informed the office of Donald Tusk that it's the UK's intention to trigger Article 50 on March 29th. There will be a letter, and she will notify President Tusk in writing. That process is set out in Article 50 herself. The Prime Minister has confirmed that she will give statement to Parliament as well. Donald Tusk. Gosh, that almost sounds like America's next top president. You know that guy many people voted for based on his pledge of America First? The idea behind this partly relates to the very legitimate concern that the U.S. empire and its military-industrial contractor benefactors have been squandering an enormous amount of treasure and tax money on foreign adventurism, funds which could be much greater use at home, helping struggling Americans fixing broken economies and infrastructures. Michael Krieger writes for Liberty Blitzkrieg, that's quite the mouthful, asking the horribly musical question, is Donald Trump about to massively expand America's imperial wars? And I think we know the answer to that question. However, I would wager that it has to be predicated on some massive false flag terror event sure to come this year.
But there are new questions about just how far the president is willing to go in Syria and what exactly he wants to accomplish there. Syria is and has been complex and deadly, a foreign hotspot unlike many others we are facing in the world now, with more U.S. troops in the middle of fighting. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is looking for answers tonight on the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Right, good evening to you. The addition of a contingent of Rangers and Marines on the ground in Syria is a dramatic recalibration of our posture in that country, and one that raises a number of difficult questions about the path ahead. The mission for Army Rangers in Manbij is to act as a buffer between competing forces who recently retook the city from ISIS. The Marines will support Kurdish forces fighting to drive ISIS from their stronghold of Raqqa.
A U.S. Marine artillery unit and a team of Rangers have recently been positioned in Syria to provide a combined joint task force operation, Inherent Resolve. The commander, the agility to expedite the destruction of ISIS in Raqqa in particular.
The troop deployment is not part of the official White House strategy to destroy ISIS. That plan is still going through the review process. While President Trump signed off on the escalation of U.S. forces, Pentagon Chief James Mattis has been given a level of autonomy to battle ISIS that the Obama administration didn't allow.
One of the things that the president has ensured is that the commanders have the flexibility to do what they need to fulfill the mission.
Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California wants the troop deployment stopped. With the support of a single Republican, she introduced a bill today that would block funding for any increase in U.S. troops in Syria, writing, quote, "For more than 15 years, the U.S. has been engaged in an ever-expanding war in the Middle East. President Trump's deployment of combat troops in Syria is the latest front in this endless war." The addition of conventional ground forces raises possible complications for the U.S. America is backing the Kurds, but Turkey, a NATO ally, views the Kurds as enemies. The potential for conflict with the U.S. caught in the middle was illuminated in a Senate hearing yesterday with the chief of CENTCOM.
I think there's a possibility of an impending conflict between Turkey and the Kurds. Do you see that as a scenario that we should be concerned about?
I do, Mr. Chairman, and to that end, we are trying to take actions to prevent that from occurring.
And then there is the thaw in relations between Turkey and Russia. Vladimir Putin and Recep Erdogan appear to have patched up their differences over Turkey's 2015 shoot-down of a Russian fighter jet, meeting together in Moscow.
The parties have spoken in support of the world society, uniting efforts in fighting terrorism.
Russia is also closely aligned with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who insists he wants back every inch of Syria, not just Raqqa.
The big problem with Iraq was we never planned for the day after. Right. So what are the plans for the day after here when Raqqa falls? Who occupies it?
Part of what the president has done during his first 50 days is issue an executive order on January 28th for the Secretary of Defense to submit a comprehensive plan in consultation with the Joint Chiefs and other members of the National Security Team to defeat ISIS. That is part of that plan.
The Pentagon favors a plan to stand up local forces to hold the city of Raqqa after it falls and to develop a viable plan for governance before ISIS is defeated. But as the CENTCOM chief said, what comes next is a lesson that the Pentagon has learned and relearned several times.
Yeah, create an enemy, destroy an enemy. Lather, rinse, repeat. There's lots of interesting dog whistles in that clip. And of course, we're already asking Insane McCain, can go join Rockefeller anytime you're ready, buddy. Also enjoyed hearing the word illuminated. And of course, fake liberals' favorite, Rachel Maddow, she's all about some Syrian war. And you know who else is? The family fucking Kagan. Back pontificating on prominent op-ed pages, the family Kagan now pushing for an expanded U.S. military invasion of Syria and baiting Republicans for not joining more enthusiastically in the anti-Russian witch hunt over Moscow's alleged help in electing America's next top president. In a Washington Compost, i.e. Bilderberger CIA mouthpiece, on March 7th, Robert Kagan, co-founder of the Project for the New American Century and a key architect of Iraq War, jabbed at Republicans for serving as Russia's accomplices after the fact by not investigating more aggressively. Then Frederick Kagan, director of Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute, and his wife Kimberly Kagan, president of her own think tank, Institute for the Study of War, because they love it, touted the idea of a bigger U.S. invasion of Syria in a Wall Street Journal op-ed on March 15th. And this is what's going to continue to build, and that's what's going to continue to rope-a-dope America's next top dope into more war for empire. There's no doubt. We are not supporters of any America's next top president candidates. You wanted a ruler, you got one. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Monday, March 20th, 2017. It is the first day of spring. And what a first day of spring it is, my friends. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, giving you a fear-free look at what's really going on in the news, and we thank you for your support at MediaMonarchy.com/support. Monday is geopolitics news, so let's continue to look around the world as the vice president of the Philippines has issued a strong rebuke of President Rodrigo Duterte's bloody war on drugs, describing it in a video sent to the United Nations as an issue of public health that cannot be solved with bullets alone. More than 8,000 people have died since Duterte began his war on drugs when he took office on June 30th, 2016. More than 2,500 people were killed in police operations during which officers said they fired in self-defense. Human rights groups say thousands of other deaths of drug users and peddlers are extrajudicial killings, probably ordered by the police. And of course, the police strongly reject that idea. In a message to be shown on Thursday at the annual meeting of the UN Commission on Drugs in Geneva, Lenny Robredo challenged Duterte's crackdown, describing the killings as summary executions. Hopeless, helpless. The body count due to the drug-related killings keeps growing. We are now looking at some very grim statistics. Grim statistics indeed.
She has now become the new face of the opposition. Vice President Lenny Robredo says she was forced to resign from President Rodrigo Duterte's cabinet after she received a text message ordering her to desist from future cabinet meetings. She told Al Jazeera the decision to break away from Duterte was a difficult one.
There was one cabinet meeting I remember when I told the president that I was even thanking him that he was not taking it against me, that I had made public pronouncements about the things that we don't agree on, and he assured me that it was okay. So I didn't really see this coming.
But it was a shaky union from the beginning. Robredo comes from the main opposition, the Liberal Party, that Duterte has accused of plotting his ouster. There was a clash of values too. Robredo has been critical of some of Duterte's policies. The extrajudicial killings brought about by his so-called war on drugs that has already killed almost 6,000 people, and the burial of former President Ferdinand Marcos at the Hero Cemetery. In this recent video, Duterte openly admired Robredo's legs. The audience laughed, but she was not amused. Robredo has also talked about plots to unseat her as vice president. She won by a slim margin against Bongbong Marcos Jr., an ally of Duterte's, who has now lodged an electoral protest against her at the Supreme Court. Duterte's chief legal counsel does not see a problem.
I think the president, by telling her not to attend, is precisely getting her out of an embarrassing moment.
Are there cracks within the cabinet?
Definitely none. There is none. So I think the president gave her a graceful way so that she can do her thing without being embarrassed in the administration.
The United States Constitution has been the model for the Philippines charters. But unlike the U.S. system, the electorate here chooses the vice president. Often, the top two executives come from two opposing political camps. Another female cabinet member says she has also been barred from attending future cabinet meetings. Critics say Duterte is becoming more intolerant to opposing views.
The Duterte-Robredo alliance was good while it lasted. Now she's become the de facto leader of the opposition and will lead the growing voices of dissent against some of Duterte's controversial policies.
Robredo has emerged as one of the few high-profile Filipinos willing to speak out against this war on drugs. Now, here's the interesting part that I can't exactly figure out. That report that we grabbed from, I believe that's Al Jazeera, comes from December 6, 2016, which was the day after South China Morning Post reported Philippine Vice President resigns, promises to lead opposition to Duterte's policies. So the story that we began reading, the body count is growing. Philippine Vice President Robredo decries Duterte's drug war tactics in a video to the UN. So if she's resigned maybe just from his cabinet, she still retains the vice presidential title? And that they are elected separately, and this gets into the politics that I can't exactly suss out right now for you. Yet we have been following Duterte's bloody drug war since it essentially began last summer. Now there's speculation again in the chat about Philippines basically being the next Venezuela and Duterte Chavez 2.0. Or maybe a little boom boom Marcos Jr. And again, history repeats itself when we get to this day in history. I believe there's something in there about Marcos. One hot spot to another. A day after the South Korea press reported that U.S. Special Forces, including a Delta Force team and the infamous SEAL Team 6, the ones that weren't whacked after they allegedly dropped bin Laden in the ocean. Remember that story? Yeah. They're participating in local drills, practicing the removal of Kim Jong-un, as well as the infiltration and destruction of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction. North Korea threatened the U.S. with merciless attacks if an aircraft carrier strike group led by the USS Carl Vinson, which is currently taking part in joint South Korean drills, infringes on sovereignty and dignity, as Reuters reported last Tuesday. Everywhere, all around the world, it's powder kegs just looking for some false flag spark.
Former commander of the USS Cole, Kirk Lippold, is with us now. It seems to me that we're not backing down. President Trump seems to be taking a more forward approach. The carrier is there, the missile defense is there, the joint exercises are there. This is a new approach, isn't it, from President Trump?
Actually, it's not, Stuart. We have this routine exercise we've done with the South Koreans for years, and for the aircraft carrier and the rest of the battle group ships to be there and conduct this exercise with South Korea is actually routine. So the fact that North Korea wants to do these merciless attacks on us, that's just more the same language that we've heard every single time we do these.
But didn't we move a missile defense system right in there, and we've not done that before? That's a forward approach, isn't it?
Very much so. And I think that's sending a strong signal not just to North Korea, but to the Chinese as well. Let's face it, China's the one who has aided and abetted North Korea throughout their ballistic missile program and their nuclear program. They're the largest trading partner. They're the largest supporter. And when it comes to it, I think that the Trump administration is going to look across the entire geopolitical spectrum, using every instrument of national power to try and get the Chinese, to get the North Korean to start behaving in a responsible manner.
There's danger here, presumably, because Kim Jong-un is, shall we say, an erratic leader. You never know what he's going to do, and here we are taking a forward position. This is a dangerous development, isn't it?
I think that the times drive it to be more dangerous than others, simply because when you look at the turmoil with the South Korean government, the fact that they are without a president with a corruption scandal, they aren't going to have elections till May. We're still continuing to move through with this exercise, which I think is a very strong signal that despite their internal turmoil, we're still going to back a principal ally in the region. The key now is to look and start working with China to figure out long-term, How are we going to reunify the peninsula? Short term, how do we prevent North Korea from misunderstanding, overreacting, and perhaps igniting a war on the peninsula, which nobody wants?
Well, reportedly early next month, President Xi from China visits President Trump at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Presumably, they'll discuss North Korea and maybe work out a new approach, because China surely does not want North Korea nuclear armed with missiles right there on its border.
Well, North Korea has aided and abetted the nuclear program and the ballistic missile program. So having it right there on the border, they do not view as a threat to them. They view it as a counterbalance to every other one of the regional players in the area. Japan, South Korea, Australia, they're looking at having North Korea as that somewhat unpredictable neighbor next to them that can create the buffer that they need. And the fact that it is nuclear armed as well really creates the heavyweight and the concern for many of the other nations there. That's why we need to work directly with the Chinese to figure out how we're going to get North Korea to behave responsibly.
So it basically seems like, and this is generally how it goes, one party seems even more war-hungry than the other. Now, make no mistake, America's next top president is already blowing shit up and killing little kids, just as all his previous puppets have. Just didn't really see many sad pictures coming out of Syria the previous 8 years, but now, watch out, here they come. But as Kurt Nimmo tweeted just a little while ago, most missile tests conducted by North Korea have failed miserably. Kid with funny haircut isn't going to nuke you. This is war propaganda. That goes along with the Telegraph story. North Korea rocket engine test shows meaningful progress. Meaningful progress. Who's going to be egged on into war first? Who's going to be pushed into it? You're not warmongering enough. Let's continue to look at our geopolitics news. That's what we focus on your Monday morning monarchies. And you can submit stories to the show using hashtag geopolitics. We spell it with a K, like the commies did. But much like bands spell their names in funny ways, it's basically so we can keep track of the stories. You can check out our Twitter feed, you can check out the website, and those have the hashtags for the subjects. And again, don't get lost in the jargon. I basically do it just to keep organized. There's a lot going on, from brand new songs to play, from all the news breaking. I just use the hashtags to organize it. You're listening to your hashtag Morning Monarchy for Monday, first day of spring, March 20th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. A pretty amazing picture goes along with this story. U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents in South San Diego arrested a man this week for attempting to smuggle 4 undocumented Chinese nationals in the trunk of his vehicle. And the CBP is nice enough to take a photo of everybody still stuffed in the trunk. I'm sure they're looking for okay, we're busted. Can you please extract us from this? Yeah, not looking very comfortable. The 24-year-old man, a U.S. citizen, was arrested around 5:45 p.m. last Tuesday at the San Ysidro port of entry. CBP agents were alerted to the vehicle by a K-9 unit. That's also always one of the worst things. Subverting animals against us. When they inspected the vehicle, 3 women, 1 man were found crammed inside the trunk. Concealing persons in vehicles is dangerous and could have severe consequences. San Ysidro CBP officers stopped a violation of our immigration law and were able to resolve the incident safely, said Pete Flores, director of field operations for CBP in San Diego, in a press release. All 4 people found inside the trunk will be placed under an immigration hold and will be removed from the U.S. The suspect was taken to Metropolitan Correctional Center and will face federal charges. It'll be interesting to see who this guy is. Just a regular good old boy looking to make some money, or is he going to be more deeply connected to the state? We are blasting through tons of news here on your Morning Monarchy, from MSNBC politics to town hall meetings across the country. The overarching issue for the Democratic Party's base since Trump's victory has been Russia, 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 Russia. Suffocating attention for most other issues. This fixation has persisted even though it has no chance to sink the Trump presidency unless it's proven that the high levels of the Trump campaign actively colluded with the Kremlin to manipulate the outcome of America's next top president, a claim for which absolutely no evidence has thus far been presented. The principal problem for Democrats is that so many media figures and online charlatans are personally benefiting from feeding the base increasingly unhinged, fact-free conspiracies, just as the right-wing media polemicists did after both Bill Clinton and Obama were elected. That there are now millions of partisan soldiers absolutely convinced of a Trump-Russia conspiracy for which, at least now, no evidence, if I haven't mentioned that. This is a Greenwald piece on The Intercept. They're all waiting for the day, which they regard as inevitable and imminent, when this theory will be proven and Trump will be removed. Maybe Rachel Maddow will pull off another big Al Capone's vault-like bullshit TV event. Key Democratic officials are clearly worried about the expectations that have been purposefully stoked and are now trying to tamp them down. Many of them have tried to signal that the beliefs that the base have been led to adopt have no basis in reason or evidence. The latest official to throw cold water on the MSNBC-led circus is President Obama's former acting CIA chief, Michael Morrell. What makes him particularly notable in this context is that Morrell was one of Clinton's most vocal CIA surrogates. In August, he not only endorsed Clinton in the pages of the New York Times, but also became the first high official to explicitly accuse Trump of disloyalty, claiming, quote, "In the intelligence business, we would say that Mr. Putin had recruited Mr. Trump as an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation." I mean, kind of like Stalin called useful idiots. Little commie left useful idiots. And again, brace yourself for massive fascist left terrorism. Last Wednesday night, Morrell appeared on an intelligence community forum to cast doubt on allegations that members of the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. On the question of the Trump campaign conspiring with the Russians here, there is smoke, but there is no fire at all. There is no little campfire, there's no little candle, there's no spark, and there's a lot of people looking for it. Obama's former CIA chief, the cocaine importation agency, also cast serious doubt on the credibility of the infamous explosive dossier, originally published by the failing pile of garbage BuzzFeed, saying that its author, Christopher Steele, paid intermediaries to talk to the sources for it. The dossier, he says, doesn't take you anywhere. Morrell's comments echo the categorical remarks by Obama's top national security official, James Clapper, who told Meet the Press last week that during the time he was Obama's DNI, Director of National Intelligence, he saw no evidence to support claims of a Trump-Russia conspiracy. We had no evidence of such collusion. Unlike Morrell, who left his official CIA position in 2013 but remains very much integrated into the intelligence community, Clapper was Obama's DNI until just 7 weeks ago, leaving on January 20th. Inauguration day for America's next top president. This article goes on, and I know I would bet a milkshake that you're probably surrounded by people in your conventional life who can barely not talk about it. They're so bent out of shape. I think I've mentioned before, I've got a neighbor who said they were not, I'm going to turn off the news, I'm going to start working out. All this garbage didn't help me. The next time I see him, hey man, how's it going? Oh, I couldn't do it. They're so obsessed. They're so angry. And again, the reason we kind of call bullshit on this is because no one ever said boo for the last 8 years of war and spying and lying and dying. All those little signs and all the yards from guilty white yuppies that surround me, it's because they're guilty. It's because they know they've done nothing. Oh, but maybe I'll put this Black Lives Matter sign in my yard. Oh, I'll put this We Love Everybody American flag bullshit sign. Now, believe it or not, I actually might have a little bit on that when we make our first day of spring Good News Next Week episode coming up a little bit later today. We also have your daily DJ set at noon coming up as well. Our news in the morning, our music in the afternoon, and of course, Good News Next Week, New World Next Week, and all the other independent alternative media brought to you by you. Finally, on this geopolitics edition of your Monday Morning Monarchy, first day of spring, a lot of events, a lot of things to check out, and a lot of questions about whether or not these events are real, whether or not it matters, whether or not these are lots of wild red herrings and honeypots and goose chases. Wasn't it interesting when we were talking about Tulipomania Friday? Even that passage made reference to red herrings and honeypots. They're everywhere. We got to watch our step. A Secret Service computer containing sensitive security information about Trump Tower was stolen from an agent's vehicle in New York on Thursday, along with a set of security perimeter pins, a personal laptop, and other items, federal and New York City law enforcement officials told Politico. Now, we'll also add to this, before we play this last clip, that, of course, you also had massive amounts of jumpers and White House gate crashers. They're going to try and pin that on, of course, everybody hates Trump. I do. Just like the previous puppets. Obama was the most hacked president. The passports, the gates, all of it. This seems to essentially be more of the same, and they've even swapped out the SS dupes. So let's see what comes of this laptop.
Well, this was a laptop that, according to our law enforcement sources, was taken from a vehicle yesterday morning at about 8:40 a.m. on Thursday morning. And now the NYPD is looking into this stolen laptop, trying to catch up with a person who took it from a vehicle. What we know is that there is surveillance video that is being examined. The question is the video good enough for police to identify a potential suspect? Right now, we're told that it is not. But they are working on that, and they're trying to track down this laptop as well because, as you mentioned, it contains some important information, sensitive information. At least that's what our law enforcement sources are telling us. Rena?
Jeff, any idea who may have taken it? Any leads from police?
No idea yet, but as I said, they're working on it. And the question is to track that down as soon as possible, because whenever you're talking about a laptop that was in the control and that belongs to the Secret Service, obviously there is important information on there. And so investigators want to track it down as soon as possible and figure out who is behind this. As I said, it happened yesterday morning, Thursday morning at about 8:40 a.m. So what investigators in New York typically do, and I worked in New York for about 10 years, so I know how they work. They canvass the neighborhood, they look for surveillance video, and that's what they are doing now. And they also try to figure out what cars were in that area at the time and how this suspect may have gotten away from the scene. So they are canvassing the area. They're looking for as many leads as they can find in this case.
We were just looking at a full screen about what may have been on that laptop, but what is the data exactly, Jeff, that's on this laptop, and why is it so important that police get this back?
Well, our law enforcement sources are telling us that it is information that pertains to President Trump, that pertains to Hillary Clinton, from what we understand, also files pertaining to the Pope. So this information is described as sensitive, and its release, according to our law enforcement sources, could be considered a compromise of national security. We are waiting to hear back from the Secret Service. They are working on getting us a statement. We still have not received that statement, so we hope to get it at least in the next few minutes.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen, buddy. We'll have to follow up a little later in the week, and we'll probably end up getting the information from our friend Lauren Coleman about all the other White House gate crashers. Now, remember all those people who, if you dress up nice, you can sneak into the White House party. I saw some clip over the weekend. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, of the guy who basically had a fake Oscar and a tuxedo and went around and got all kinds of pictures, got all kinds of sweet deals, and even was able to talk valets into giving him a car because he has a suit on and a little award. This is the idiocracy we're surrounded by. And we'll have to continue all of this research. And again, I can't do it without your help. We're also, of course, noting that there's going to probably have to be some massive false flag terror event to get us into wider war, whether that wider war is with North Korea or with Syria or with God knows what. Maybe the Weather Underground will probably call themselves the Climate Underground this time. But I just see in the chat, this is really interesting. I saw Anderson Cooper at the airport the other day. He was reading a book called Black Flags, The Rise of ISIS by Joby Warwick. Black flags, false flags, they ain't flying anymore. At least not for us. Because we read the playbook and we figured out how this shit works. That's why we're trying to learn our way forward and change what actually happens, change what we do, change what we take part in, change what we support. That's just your brief look at geopolitics news. I crammed as much as I possibly could into that 44 minutes, my friends. We've got brand new, amazing music from Conor Oberst. You might know him from Bright Eyes. We'll use that to wrap up this episode. A little uncanny it is, and it even mentions Hanoi Jane in there. And Ronald Reagan. But of course, past his prologue, let's look at this day in history. Quite a day of events, my friends. No coincidence. March 20th, 1602, the Dutch East India Company was established. 1616, Sir Walter Raleigh is freed from the Tower of London after 13 years of imprisonment. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin was published on this day in 1852, and in 1915, Albert Einstein publishes his general theory of relativity on this day. I also saw some reports from Muckrock just a little bit ago, noting, of course, the CIA psychics trying to invoke or contact Albert Einstein. March 20th, 1948, with a musicians ban lifted, the first telecasts of classical music in the United States under Eugene Ormandy and Arturo Toscanini are given on CBS and NBC. March 20th, 1968, Eric Clapton, Neil Young, Richie Furay, and Jim Messina were all arrested on drug charges in Los Angeles. March 20th, 1969, married in Gibraltar, New Spain, John and Yoko got married on this day. This day in 1977, the last T-Rex concert took place. Huge thanks to my new music producer, Sean Cathcart. He's apparently just as much of a voracious music nerd as I am, and we've been trading all kinds of music. I love it. He got me a digital copy of an old T-Rex single, Ride the Black Swan. March 20th, 1987, the Food and Drug Administration approves the anti-AIDS drug AZT, and on this day in 1990, Ferdinand Marcos' widow, Imelda Marcos, goes on trial for bribery, embezzlement, and racketeering. That very same day, Gloria Estefan and her band are injured in a bus accident near Scranton, PA. I remember that being a massive, massive story. She was one of the biggest pop stars at the time, and they wonder if she would ever do anything again. Interesting sinks for Eric Clapton. So arrested on this day in 1968. And then on this day, March 20th in 1991, Eric Clapton's 4-year-old son Connor died after falling from a 53rd-story New York City apartment window. And that's what Tears in Heaven are about. March 20th, 1995. Several packages of deadly sarin gas are set off in the Tokyo subway system, killing 12 people and injuring over 5,000. Sarin gas was invented by the Nazis. I'm sure they did it without any outside help at all, and is one of the most lethal nerve gases known to man. Isn't it interesting? Friday's Day in History note was about the Skull Valley nerve testing. So we can always look around the world and go, oh, those Nazis, oh, those crazy Japanese cults. But there's enough cult madness to go all around. Tokyo police quickly learned who had planted the chemical weapons and began tracking the terrorists down. Thousands of checkpoints were set up across the nation in a massive dragnet. The gas attack was instituted by the Aum Shinrikyo, which means Supreme Truth Cult.
This is the spiritual center of Aum Shinrikyo, where disciples sit for hours on end, repeating the words of their mysterious guru, Shoko Asahara, the man the police want to question in connection with the poison gas attack on Tokyo's subway.
It's very different from the ordinary world.
Do you want to stay here?
I would like to stay here.
You would like
that
to
means
stay
I would like to stay near Master.
Steve Hassan is a former Moonie, a disciple of the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Now he's a licensed counselor and believes that Aum Shinrikyo is in reality a cult.
Would you characterize Aum Shinrikyo as a destructive cult? Absolutely. They demand that people cut off from family members and friends if they're critical. They don't want you to have any access to critical information about it all. No former members, even if it's friends of yours who've left. And like all mind control groups, they instill phobias inside members' minds to make them afraid that if they ever leave the group, they'll lose their salvation, they'll lose their sanity.
I have to tell you, though, some of the people we talked to, not all of them, but some of them did seem to have some rational thinking capabilities. Some of them seemed to be rather happy at what they were doing.
When you're in a group where you're not allowed to think negative thoughts about the leader or the doctrine of the group, you have to suppress those negative thoughts, and you only can speak positive thoughts. For hundreds of years, the whole culture was one of submission to authority figures, and it's best typified in World War II by Emperor Hirohito and his quest to take over the world.
Do you think that, in a sense, these new religious groups are taking the place of the emperor worship that you refer to?
Yeah, and I don't just speak about religious groups, but I'd say political cults and therapy cults and even some business cults. The same kind of don't think for yourself, don't feel your feelings, don't exert free will, be completely dependent and obedient to the authority figure. He'll take care of you or she'll take care of you. They know the truth, just follow. Well, it appears to me that the Japanese officials are dealing with cult members in the same way that the FBI was dealing with David Koresh's organization, treating them like criminals or treating them like hostages as opposed to treating them as members of a mind control cult. It seems to me that they're backing him further and further into a corner. They're allowing him no out, no way out.
I like that speaker there on that old 60 Minutes clip makes no distinction between religious cults, governmental cults, corporate cults, mind control cults, as they are all the same. March 20th, 2000, Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, former Black Panther, once known as H. Rap Brown, which I probably first heard the name on, again, to mention Fear of a Black Planet from Public Enemy. Burn, Hollywood, burn. Now, we're considering you for a part in our latest production. How do you feel about playing a controversial Negro? Oh, yeah, I'm with that. You mean somebody like Huey P. Newton or H. Rap Brown, right? Well, he's a servant who shuffles a little bit and sings. Yeah, fuck that. H. Rap Brown was captured on this day, March 20th, 2000, after murdering, allegedly, Georgia Sheriff Deputy Ricky Kinchin and critically wounding Deputy Algernon English. I thought it said Alderon. And there are lots of other terror events between the year 2000 and the day we stand today. I wouldn't even include them all. But again, everything we say and play is always included in the show notes. Everything we mention can go be researched for yourself, and we implore you to do that. I'm only just laying out breadcrumbs. Or again, as was just noted in the chat, can just plant seeds. It's up to them if they want them to grow. March 20th, 2015, a solar eclipse, equinox, and a supermoon all occurred on this day 2 years ago today, but posted to MediaMonarchy.com 10 years ago on this day. If George W. Bush launches a preemptive war on Iran, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will bear full moral responsibility for that war. For it was Pelosi who quietly agreed to strip out the $100 billion funding bill for Iraq, a provision that would have required President Bush to seek congressional approval before launching any new war on Iran. March 20th, 2007, posted to MediaMonarchy.com, Pelosi's capitulation. We've been trying to follow the real news for quite some time, my friends. We've been online since 9/11/05, and it is all brought to you by you. So, of course, if there's no shortage of massive events, of course, birthdays today, quite interesting as well. Born on this day, March 20th, first day of spring, Roman poet Ovid, Norwegian poet, playwright, and director Henrik Ibsen. It's also the creator of the Skinner box, B.F. Skinner's birthday. Robert Phoenix was actually talking about that late last night on his live stream. Ozzie Nelson's birthday, sister Rosetta Tharpe. It's also Fred Roger. That's Mr. Rogers to you. Willie Brown. You remember the former mayor of San Francisco who was warned not to fly on 9/11 and it saved his life? It's also Lee Scratch Perry. He's one of the wokest around. It's also Jerry Reed's birthday. Paul Junger-Witt, who you probably saw as a name at the end of all kinds of sitcoms we watched as little kids. William Hurt. Carl Palmer of Emerson, Lake and, Jimmy Vaughn, Stevie's brother, Spike Lee, Teresa Russell, Holly Hunter, Kathy Ireland, Mookie Blaylock, that was the original name of Pearl Jam, Michael Rappaport, Torre, and Chili Gonzalez, who actually just released a record with Jarvis Cocker. However, we are going to wrap up with brand new music from Connor Oberst, A Little Uncanny, my friends. I appreciate you so very much for listening and your support at MediaMonarchy.com/support. This has been your Monday, first day of spring, March 20th, 2017, Morning Monarchy. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonica.com. Thanking you so much for listening, my friends, and reminding you, as always, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
Drinking the Kool-Aid, we were taking the bait, we were talking the big talk, never playing it safe. Looking good as Jane Fonda on a Vietnam tank. You can't get something for nothing, gotta energize your base. But she was young enough, she was blonde enough, she was about at perfect 10. Had millions of admirers, but not one single friend. But it's a little uncanny what she managed to do. Became a symbol for a pain she never knew. He was a shoe salesman's son. He got himself in the movies. Yeah, he impressed everyone. He thought trial by fire was America's fate. He made a joke with the poor people, and that made him a saint. But he was tan enough, he was rich enough, he was handsome like John Wayne. And there was no one at the country club who didn't feel the same. But it's a little uncanny what he managed to do. Got me to read those Russian authors through and through. I miss Christopher Hitchens, I miss Oliver Sacks, I miss poor Robin Williams, I miss Sylvia Plath. Every morning's a desert, every night is a flood. They say a party can kill you, well sometimes I wish it would. But I'll be strong enough, I'll be man enough, oh I'll keep myself in check. Cause all my friends who flew to town said that's what they expect. But it's a little uncanny what they managed to do. Got me admitting the things I knew were never true.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.